We've got some more detail now on the Labor Party and the energy debate within it. Tom Connell joins me now, our political reporter. Tom, you've obtained what they're calling a peace deal, basically, on the gas issue.
Yeah, it's been described by some as a peace deal. It's gone through shadow cabinet. We know, of course, what's been going on has been described as a civil war. At the very least, some serious division over energy policy, privately and publicly, in particular between the Shadow Resources Minister Joel Fitzgibbon and the Shadow Climate Change and Energy Minister Mark Butler. So it's come to a head in particular recently over gas policy. The government pledging this gas-led recovery from COVID-19 and gas as a key transition fuel. That got support straight away from Joel Fitzgibbon. Mark Butler, immediately his response, said, well, more of a focus was needed on renewable energy. So it's been of increasing concern to Labor's leadership team, so much so that what has been described as this peace accord or peace deal has been struck. Now, it's gone through shadow cabinet. They have approved what are essentially a set of values on gas. So we've seen this set of values. We're going to take you through them. It highlights support, first of all, for the growth and export opportunities of gas and the whole sector there. It has specific support for gas-fired electricity. It does back gas as a firming power, so for renewable energy, of course, and it mentions very specifically it's important, that is gas, to get to Labor's 2050 net zero emissions target. So that's an important point there. On gas policy outside of electricity, this document talks about backing the industry's need for reliable and affordable gas. So think of these big users. It supports new gas projects, crucially, subject, though, to environmental approval. But new gas projects is significant. I'm sure Joel Fitzgibbon is happy with that. Support workers in the industry. This is a crucial one, Kieran. We know previously it's been about, what do you think of coal workers? Is gas workers the next sort of argument? Well, this specifically says, let's talk about our support for the workers. Let's also hold the Liberal Party to account on what Labor says are failures in the East Coast market. And that leads us to other criticism of the government. So, they'll all be on board with this. The gas-led recovery is all talk, no job. So not saying we shouldn't have a gas-led recovery. That's important too. The government has no policy on 2050 and net zero emissions there, and an issue with their various energy policies. And the recovery must focus more on renewables. Now, we spoke earlier today to the Deputy Leader, Richard Marles. He maintains that Labor is, and we put this essentially what was happening in this document to him, not the specifics, but is this civil war, if you like, over? Is Labor on the same page? And he says that is the case. They're united on gas policy.
I think it's settled. I think what you see is a resources minister or shadow minister who's speaking in respect of resources, which is what you would expect, and the minister responsible for climate change and the promotion of renewable energy doing the same there. But here's where both Mark and Joel agree, and indeed there is agreement across the caucus. We support the Australian gas industry. I mean, Australia is the largest gas exporter in the world. Of course we support the gas industry. We understand how important the role it is in electricity generation.
So you heard him pivot to his emphasis. He's the Deputy Leader, he's of the right of the party, and this can be the emphasis if you look at this document. Support the industry, the workers. It's going to have a long role. We're going to be a huge exporter. For those more concerned within the party about emissions, the party's position is also, as mentioned, the government's gas-led recovery lacks enough ambition for renewables. This was Mark Butler also speaking today, only shortly after Richard Marles.
Not only does the so-called gas-fired recovery fail to deliver any recovery, it is completely out of touch with the clear message being given by all business groups, by investors, by lenders, by central banks here in Australia and all around the world. And that is that economic recovery pathways out of this COVID pandemic and the recessions that have been driven by the pandemic should be paved with clean energy.
A key question here, Kieran, is, can different parts of the Labor Party have a different emphasis? Policy is complicated. I'm not saying you can't say gas is needed, but also more renewables are needed, which Labor is essentially saying. But there is some concern within the party. If you emphasise two very different things, are you seen as not being committed to one or the other? We'll see if the peace still holds as well. This doesn't involve gas. We're not even talking yet about emissions target, which is another thing down the road. But the party was concerned, why are we ripping ourselves into pieces over this, over gas? Let's get a position on this because we're falling for the government's bait. The gas-led recovery, we're getting ourselves into a tiz over this. Let's not do that. So we'll see how it works, but there is a pleasure within Labor that they have been able to thrash this out at least. Yeah. We'll see how it unfolds. Overall, you have to say it is relatively pro-gas, and that seemed to be where more of the party was heading. Hey, we can't have this fight again and try to demonise gas into the next election.
No, well, they can't. They can't have any sign of division. They've got to be unified on this and say we're credible, not just on this component of policy, but economic policy broadly. If they're going to be any chance into the next election, they can't be talking about this well into 2021.